Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Manns, and I'd like to welcome you to the April 4th Coalition Show. This is the January 29th, 2024 edition, and is the 485th show that we have taped since the closing of the North Adams Regional Hospital, and the 25th one that we have done since the announcement of its possible reopening. The April 4th Coalition mission statement is, we are for workers' rights and collective bargaining rights, and are against tax breaks for the rich and corporations who ship our jobs overseas. We support all the articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but as is our custom, we put the emphasis on Article 23, and as Mike Wilper is joining us today, Dick has 1 and 2.
Yes. Number one, everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and protection against unemployment. Number 2, everyone, without any discrimination, has the right to equal pay for equal work.
Number 3, everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, which is any form of compensation, ensuring for himself or herself and his or her family an existence worthy of human dignity, and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Michael, number 4.
Number 4, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of his or her interests.
Okay, and as our custom, we'd like to thank Michael Putnam, who is the program director for the radio station WMNB-LP 107.1, for airing the audio portion of our show on Fridays at 6 p.m., and to the staff at Northern Berkshire Community Television Corp., Joanne Hurlbut, Nicole A. Brown, and David Fabiano for assisting us in producing the show. And I'm going to turn it over to Dick while I try and get my mic back on.
Well, thank you, Liz, and thank you, Mike. We wanted to start off the show first with a Robert Reich video, which is titled "The Silent Revolution in American Economics." So let's take a look at that video, and then we'll have some comment after.
I don't think you're expecting what I'm about to say, because I've never seen anything like this in 50 years in politics. It's the Joe Biden story that's not really being told.
We're not going back.
For decades, I've been sounding an alarm about how our economy has become increasingly rigged for the rich. I've watched it get worse under both Republicans and Democrats. But what President Biden has done in his first term gives me hope I haven't felt in years. It's a complete sea change. Here are key areas where Biden is fundamentally reshaping our economy to make it better for working people. Number 1, trade and industrial policy. Biden is breaking with decades of reliance on free trade deals and free market philosophies. He's instead focusing on domestic policies designed to revive American manufacturing and fortify our own supply chains. Take 3 of his signature pieces of legislation so far: the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, and his infrastructure package. This flood of government investment has brought about a new wave in American manufacturing. Unlike Trump, who just levied tariffs on Chinese imports and used it as a campaign slogan, Biden is actually investing in America's manufacturing capacity, so we don't have to rely on China in the first place. He's turning the tide against deals made by previous administrations, both Democratic and Republican, that helped Wall Street but ended up costing American jobs and lowering American wages. Number 2, monopoly power. Biden is the first president in living memory to take on big monopolies. Giant firms have come to dominate almost every industry. 4 beef packers now control over 80% of the market. Domestic air travel is dominated by 4 airlines, and most Americans have no real choice of internet providers. In a monopolized economy, corporate profits rise, consumers pay higher prices, and workers' wages shrink. But under Biden, the Federal Trade Commission and the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department have become the most aggressive monopoly fighters in more than half a century. They're going after Amazon and Google, Ticketmaster and Live Nation, JetBlue and Spirit, and a wide range of other giant corporations. Number 3, labor. Biden is also the most pro-union president I've ever seen. A big reason for the surge in workers organizing and striking for higher wages is the pro-labor course Biden is charting. The Reagan years blew in a typhoon to America.
If they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
Corporations routinely sank unions and fired workers who attempted to form them. They offshored production or moved to so-called right-to-work states that enacted laws making it hard to form unions. Even though Democratic presidents promised labor law reforms that would strengthen unions, they didn't follow through. But under Joe Biden, organized labor has received a vital lifeboat. Unionizing has been protected and encouraged. Biden is even the first sitting president to walk a picket line. Biden's National Labor Relations Board is stemming the tide of unfair labor practices, requiring companies to bargain with their employees, speeding the period between union petitions and elections, and making it harder to fire workers for organizing. Americans have every reason to be outraged at how decades of policies that prioritized corporations over people have thrown our economy off keel. But these three waves of change, a worker-centered trade and industrial policy, strong anti-monopoly enforcement, and moves to strengthen labor unions, are navigating toward a more equitable economy. It's a sea change that's long overdue.
I can tell Robert Reich is happy, but I doubt the corporations are, which is probably why they're swinging their support back to Trump, because they want free hand again.
Right. As much as they're swinging their endorsement to Trump, just recently the UAW came out and endorsed President Biden. We have a clip from the Young Turks, and where, Trump, he calls down, auto workers president Shawn Fain calls Donald Trump a scab, and said the former president, after announcing, said of the former president, so he announced his endorsement of Joe Biden. So let's listen to what the Young Turks have to say with this endorsement of Joe Biden by the Shawn Fain, the head of the UAW.
Could have considered Donald Trump. You did not. Why not?
Well, I mean, if you look at just the facts and the body of work of both candidates and, both of them in their own words, nowhere in history has Donald Trump ever stood for the American worker, much everything that we stand for.
After holding out for months, the United Auto Workers has officially endorsed President Joe Biden for re-election. And you just heard from UAW President Shawn Fain, who came with lots of receipts to help explain why it makes sense for the union to choose Biden over Trump. Let's take a look.
President Biden stood there with us on the picket line, unlike President Trump back in 2019 when GM was on strike for 40 days and he was completely non-existent and silent on the issue. I can go down through the list of things, the difference in the candidates, but it's very clear to us who stands with working class people in this country and who stands against them. In 2008, 2009, the economic recession, Donald Trump blamed the workers for what was wrong with these companies. In 2015, he talked about doing a rotation of good paying jobs in the Midwest, somewhere where they pay less and have people begging for their jobs back at lower wages. In 19, also in 15, when Volkswagen workers voted to organize, he put an NLRB in place that killed the organizing, the contract for those workers. In 19, when he was president, he didn't support the strike. He told workers at Lordstown Assembly Plant, which was closing, don't sell your houses. And then he did nothing to support them, versus President Biden, who in 2023, when a plant was going to close in Belvidere, Illinois for Stellantis, he stood with those workers. He helped us save a community and helped bring not one plant, but two plants back to life. And he stood with our members on the picket line in our fight for economic justice.
Now, that was quite a long list of reasons why he chose to endorse Biden over Donald Trump, but he did hold out. The UAW did hold out. And look, for the purposes of a friendlier pro-labor administration, I believe it makes sense for the UAW to endorse Biden over Trump. There's also the option of not endorsing anyone, but I think that there were some conversations that were had, behind closed doors. Biden was willing to work with the UAW in regard to EV vehicles and how it would impact the jobs that they do. So it is fair to say that Biden is far more friendly to labor compared to Trump. I know that that's shocking to some MAGA supporters who have completely bought into Trump's phony populist rhetoric about workers. But the fact of the matter is he hasn't really delivered for average workers in this country or any workers in this country. He has succeeded in securing tax cuts for the rich, though.
Yeah. I don't think this is even close.
Right.
I don't even know why this would be a conversation. Look, I think that Sean O'Brien, who's the leader of the Teamsters, and Shawn Fain are doing a good job in holding their power and their leverage and then using it at the right time. Sean O'Brien interviewed or met with almost all of the candidates on the Democratic and Republican side. I think that's a smart thing to do. Fain didn't bother meeting with Trump, but why? Because of his track record. His track record is not unclear. So we get frustrated with Biden, and the Democrats. So they'll always say that they're going to pass some sort of major pro-union legislation like the PRO Act. They never do anything about it. They barely even propose it. Obama did nothing, Biden did nothing. So there's plenty of things to get frustrated with Biden about, but there's also upsides for Biden with labor. The National Labor Relations Board is terrific. He did go on the picket line a couple of times. He did help the striking rail workers behind the scenes after the strike, et cetera. So there's at least some significant positives on the Biden side. On the Trump side, it's nothing but a giant list of negatives.
Also,
look, okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Cenk, but also you have to think about what the priority is for the leader of the United Auto Workers, and it's labor. That is the top issue. That is what matters. That is the top priority. So I see some people online on the left attacking Shawn Fain. He called for a ceasefire. The UAW called for a ceasefire in Gaza back in December. So they are on the right side in regard to the war on Gaza. However, the Biden administration's handling of the war was not the top priority in making this endorsement. The top priority is which administration is going to be best for labor, because that's our top priority.
Again, not close. Guys, anybody that watches this show or any other show that I've been on knows I couldn't be more in favor of Palestinian rights and ending this war and ending the occupation. But we can do several things at the same time. This brother went out of his way to try to help the Palestinians, but that's not his main job. It's not even close to his main job. His main job is to look out for union members in UAW. And so in doing that, that one is not close. So back to Trump, he has never done anything for workers. So every time there's a strike, he sides with the companies, the giant corporations, and not the people. He doesn't even think there should be a minimum wage. He's on the record as saying that. The lower your wages are, the happier he is. Guess why? He's one of the elites. So here's what MAGA never understood. Trump always wanted to be in the club, but they always thought he was a loser, before he got into politics. And so that always got under his skin, and that's part of why he hated the elites. Not because he didn't want to be part of them, but because he wanted to be part of them so badly. And remember, MAGA guys, still pretend that Trump's a billionaire. I mean, nobody thinks that in reality, but the MAGA guys do, and Trump says he's a billionaire. So, and certainly he owns a lot of businesses. He's driven a lot of them into the ground and bankrupted them, but he still has the Trump Organization, et cetera. And there he wants wages as low as possible. Remember, for a long time in construction and real estate, Donald Trump used undocumented workers at all of his sites. He's like, why would I pay an American when I could just pay lower? You know how Trump is. He doesn't want to pay high. He wants to pay as low as humanly possible for American workers and sometimes non-American workers. His golf courses were filled with undocumented immigrants.
Right.
So this guy is terrible on labor, awful. So I just don't see this as an interesting question or conversation. Of course, UAW should endorse Joe Biden between those two candidates. And right now, realistically, it looks like it's between those two candidates.
I want to go to, well, one more video, because during a speech before the unionized UAW workers, Shawn Fain had some harsh words for Donald Trump, and I thought it was fun. It was certainly a little more lively than what you saw on Fox News. So let's take a look at that.
Donald Trump is a scab. Donald Trump is a billionaire, and that's who he represents. If Donald Trump ever worked in an auto plant, he wouldn't be a UAW member. He'd be a company man trying to squeeze the American worker.
True. Absolutely true. So I love the energy there. I love to see it. And who knows? I mean, with Sean Fain spreading this real message about the anti-labor characteristics of Donald Trump, maybe some who support Trump will dig a little deeper to see if it's true, maybe fact check Sean Fain and realize, oh, that's actually right. Trump was not so friendly toward labor. The other thing I wanted to just quickly mention, because I think it's important. Again, bringing up the discontent among the left toward Joe Biden and his support for Israel's war on Gaza. It is true that there are UAW workers who feel the same way. And so during that UAW conference, Joe Biden appeared and he gave his own speech. The speech was interrupted many, many times by UAW workers who are also, pro-Palestinian protesters. So I wanted to give you a little taste of that. And I want to be clear, the people protesting are also UAW workers. In other videos, you'll hear others basically say 4 more years in support of Joe Biden. So I wanted to give you that proper context, but without further ado, here's what happened. So you hear some people saying UAW to kind of drown out the protesters. And look, the fact of the matter is when it comes to workers, especially when it comes to UAW workers, we're talking about a lot of people. There are gonna be differences in political opinion. And if you take a look at the breakdown in who the UAW workers have voted for in the past, the UAW's membership base is not a political monolith, right? About 1/3 of its members voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020, and that's according to the union's internal polling. So the real trick and I think the most difficult thing to do when it comes to being a union leader is ensuring that all of your workers feel connected to one another and that they prioritize being, part of labor. Who look out for one another as opposed to tearing each other down over, some political differences, which of course are gonna happen. And I love that.
Yeah, so first of all, I was gonna bring up that 1/3 stat too, because when you see Sean Fain, I think 2 things. One, this brother's not for the faint of heart.
Nailed it.
No, I love his energy, right? And I love his clarity. He just, I don't think it's that hard, but apparently a lot of people in public life struggle with being able to make a clear case. He just listed things one after another of what Trump did wrong. We showed it to you earlier. He does it many times. And so the reason why that's so important is because number one, he's making a better case for Biden than Biden ever has. Like, I've never seen Biden make a quarter of the case that Sean Fain made against Donald Trump. Biden barely talks, barely campaigns. So when you see someone like Sean Fain making the case for Biden, you're like, wow, that's actually pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. And so he should be all over the campaign trail if he wants to and they want to have him. But number 2 is really important. He's got credibility with American workers because he just delivered great results. He got them higher wages, he got them all these things that he wanted. And yes, he got it specifically for the UAW workers, but all American workers saw with our own eyes that he delivered. And I'm sure that a lot of people thought, I wish I had a guy like that fighting for me at work.
Well,
right?
Other car companies, in response to UAW workers securing a better contract, ended up experiencing an increase in their own wages, even if they're not unionized, even if they're not part of UAW.
Yeah, so when a guy like that who has delivered comes and says, Trump's not the guy, and here's why, a lot more people listen. And so 1/3 of those guys that voted for Trump, if I told them, hey, Trump's bad, they might not listen as much.
They definitely would not listen.
Well, but they would listen to me more than they would listen to an average Democrat because because at least I'm honest, and I criticize Democrats as well, so they can tell when someone's honest. But Shawn Fain's got the honesty, the hard-hitting stuff that I think that Anna and I have, but he also has the credibility of having delivered for these same guys.
Absolutely.
And made their lives materially better, and I think they all recognize that. So when he says Trump's a bad guy, they're much more likely to listen to him. So this is important in more ways than one. In the old days when the unions did endorsements, it was always rubber stamp, Democrat, and no one cared, no one paid attention, and they never made a good case. They never affected anyone.
True.
Here we're dealing with a completely different scenario with Sean O'Brien and Shawn Fain that I think could make a big difference in this election.
Let's hope it does, because in my experience with union is that you can tell them what to do, you can advise them, which is about the best Shawn Fain can do, but ultimately when they go into the booth, they have to make the choice themselves to pull the lever.
Right. Well, I apologize for having that show for so long, but I thought what they had to say was worthwhile. I liked hearing the UAW president
Oh yes, he's got a lot of energy,
saying that Donald Trump is a scab.
Oh, he's right. Oh, he's right. He's all for management and not.
He just an expensive scab.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just,
So.
But yeah, I think the
Well, anybody looking at the two of them would know which one. And yes,
pro-labor.
which one's pro-labor in this situation.
Well, and that.
But do you care that they're pro-labor?
In that video, it talked about the Palestinian, the Gaza movement. Like about a couple months ago, there was a demonstration. Thousands of members of Jewish Voice for Peace and their allies shut down the main terminal of Grand Central Station during rush hour. 400 people were arrested and was believed the largest sit-in protest in New York has seen in over 2 decades. I hadn't seen it. I watched the news a lot and I hadn't seen it. So I just want to show you this clip because I think it's pretty amazing seeing this demonstration. And this is led by a group called Jewish Voice for Peace.
This is New York's famous Grand Central Station, and you can see banners reading, "Palestinians should be free."
Thousands of members of Jewish Voice for Peace and their allies shut down the main terminal of Grand Central Station during rush hour. 400 people were arrested in what's believed to be the largest sit-in protest New York has seen in over 2 decades.
This is the Jewish Voice for Peace. They support the protests and calling for a ceasefire.
The turnout is massive. Thousands of New Yorkers united in a call for peace.
At one point, there were so many protesters, the terminal was closed.
The group, made up mostly of Jewish New Yorkers, is calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Wearing T-shirts that read, "Not in our name."
Right now, you are hearing thousands of Jewish New Yorkers who are raising our voices. So clear that our safety can never come at the expense of another community's safety.
President Biden and Blinken, listen to what people are telling you. Especially the young people and lots of Jews.
While the group comprised mostly of Jewish activists, people from all backgrounds were here.
I'm here because the U.S. government is funding the bombardment, the indiscriminate bombing of 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza who have no access to fuel, have no access to medical supplies. Their hospitals are being bombed, their schools are being bombed. There is nowhere to go.
What's happening to Palestinians has been happening for decades, and it must end now.
Sources say NYPD arrested close to 300 people, possibly more.
It's been a pretty extraordinary night inside Grand Central Terminal. Take a look right behind me here. Members of that Jewish activist group standing on a ledge next to the departure sign. You've got the NYPD trying to get them down. This was sort of reminiscent of a protest back in 1991 when members of ACT UP went on that ledge and protested. So what you're watching right now are members of the Jewish Voice for Peace being taken into custody. They are demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. And for the most part, it's been pretty peaceful here.
My Jewish tradition teaches me that life is precious. And that is why so many of us are doing all that we can to try to save lives in Gaza, to call for an immediate ceasefire so that Gaza can live.
Wow, it's very moving. I mean, they.
It was very powerful, and they're hoping that because it's Jewish, that it's Jewish people leading. I'm not saying they're the sole people protesting, because I'm sure there was
Others
a coalition
support,
there.
yeah.
That
They're the
it
lead.
will be heard more than
Yeah.
if you had seen Palestinians leading
Yeah.
this. Because
So-
there seems to be a bias towards Palestinians, that
Yeah.
people don't want to hear them
Right.
or see them.
The International Court of Justice ordered Israel to prevent genocide in Gaza just Friday. So we have a clip of a short reading of the judge that was the lead judge in this case. And she's an American, worked in the State Department, but she works for the United Nations right now. Let's have that final video, International Court of Justice.
The court considers that, with regard to the present situation, Israel must, in accordance with its obligations under the Genocide Convention, in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention, in particular, A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. The court recalls that these acts fall within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention when they are committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part the group as such. The court is also of the view that Israel must take measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to the members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
We just have 32 seconds left.
Right, do you want to talk about the Poor People's March? Or do you want to save that?
We'll save that. The Poor People's March will be on March 2nd. It's
a little over a month away.
It's going to be at the State House in Boston. It's just, it's a national movement, but there's going to be a demonstration at our State House on March 2nd, 2024, calling for the end of poverty.
And we'll see you next week.
There's power in the factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lessons of the past were all learned with workers' blood. The strikes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trenches full of mud.